Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here again, just having a chat to you about things that matter, that is, things that matter to you and things that matter to me. Not that anybody really cares, but at this particular point, I've just done a feed to the Child Protection Party, just talking about QAnon and whether or not the Child Protection Party believes in conspiracy theories. I just want people to know we don't. There you go. We don't believe in conspiracy theories. We don't support conspiracy theories. If something has happened to somebody and they wish to talk to us about it and it's of a horrific nature, or actually anything for that matter, but particularly if it's of an horrific nature, we're more than happy to listen to you and to try and understand what's been happening for you and to help you through whatever that is. Particularly as a social worker, it's kind of my job. So if you want to have a look at what I'd say about conspiracy theories, then please go to Child Protection Party YouTube page and have a look. So something just cropped up there. So the point is, no one watches these things, so I can sit here and rant and rave as much as I like and fill in my Sunday afternoon, probably because I've got nothing else to do, which is pretty true. Well, actually, that's not true, but I have decided that I think I said to everybody that I'd been trying to do one of these a day. I haven't been successful, but I'm still working on it, so maybe we'll get there eventually. And if you wish to subscribe to the page, please subscribe, ring the bell to get notifications when I'm having my next feed. So, but I just want to talk about some other issues. So what I'm trying to do is take some excerpts from the news and talk about that and give that my spin for whatever that might be worth. But there was an article in the Advertiser about big tech rigging elections. And normally I'd have some fancy graphic that would pop up, but I couldn't be bothered putting one together, so I didn't. But this is about Facebook and YouTube and Twitter all deciding that they wouldn't support some of the bizarre statements coming out of Mr. Giuliani and the Republican Party, and particularly in relation to conspiracy theories or unfounded theories relating to Hunter Biden. And, of course, the Democrats thought this was okay, and the Republicans didn't. They objected greatly because they see this as contravening their civil liberties, particularly, I guess, freedom of speech. And Lindsey Graham, who is a dominant right-wing nutcase in the US, said, we're going to finally have an accounting that's long overdue. Now, when he talks about accounting, I assume he's saying that we're going to find a way to prosecute or to legislate against some of these organisations, these social media organisations making a stand against garbage that's put on their platforms. And that the power behind these platforms has been taken to a level that truly is dangerous. And we've got this situation, not just in the US, but kind of filtering around the rest of the world, whereby if you object to the government or party in power, then clearly something needs to be done to keep you quiet, because it's not like we can have we can have an honest and reasonable discussion around anything. It's not like we can't just simply disagree anymore. That if you disagree with me, then clearly you're wrong and I need to do something. If I'm in power, I need to do something to shut you up, because we don't want your views filtering through to the population, because it may influence the way they think. It's a bit like this stuff you hear about the education system is extremely left-wing and that we must curb that sort of left-wing behaviour within the education system because it will produce people that are, socialists, I guess. Marxists or some other horrific group of people that will challenge the system. The point is that we need to be educating people to be critical thinkers so that they can challenge the system. And that sometimes critical thinkers will think, well, that they won't necessarily abide by what the left is doing, particularly what the extreme left and the progressives are doing. They might find a place to sit somewhere in the middle. But if you're a critical thinker, you're going to be aligning stuff to your own values. And I guess a part of critical thinking is to work out what those values are and not to become part of the process whereby you just follow other people. So it's this sheep mentality that must be overcome so that people can think independently. And I kind of wonder whether there's certain aspects of the political structure that just wants us to behave and think as they do, and that if we object to the way they're behaving or thinking, then we need to be pulled into line. Some of us, in an autocracy, you get locked up for thinking differently. So we need to be wary, I guess, as to where society is heading. That will mean that we will, if we object to anything, we're going to find ourselves behind bars. And in the US, that is very much the way it's going, regretfully. You hear Trump and his cronies wanting the Justice Department to take action against Obama and Hillary Clinton and a whole host of other people that worked in his administration, not because they've committed any crime, but simply because he doesn't like them. And then when we get to that point in our society where it's because we don't like somebody, we think that they should be locked up, and we have the power and authority to influence others to do that, then we're heading for that democracy is in trouble. That democracy is fracturing, and that's what's happening in the US at the moment. No doubt that the democracy there is falling apart. And pardon me, got something caught in the throat. So we need to stand against it. We need to accept that. Jacinda Ardern won the New Zealand election with a landslide yesterday. And one of the things she said in her speech, which I thought was really important, was to acknowledge that we're living in a far more diverse society than we ever have before. That is diversity of opinions. And that we can disagree. And we should disagree where necessary with others. And it doesn't necessarily mean that those people are going to see things as we do, because often they don't. But it does mean that we need to take on board what it is that they're saying, because the issues that they're raising are important to them. So we need to acknowledge what they are, take them on board, and make sure that we at least have consideration for what they're doing. Because some of the things that they're saying to us are about them hurting, and that if we're not hearing them, so they might have a completely different political view, but the fact that they're hurting is relevant. One of the reasons why Donald Trump became elected was that no one was listening to the part of the population that was actually hurting. I don't think he was either. I don't think he could care. But he actually tapped into it, and those people were stupid enough to believe him, and they still are. So, but there is this need and this desire, I think, for people of all persuasions to have politicians hear what they have to say, and not necessarily that those politicians can do anything about it per se, but they can at least inform their colleagues of what's happening, and perhaps there may be some policies that could be developed that would help all those people. And one of the things that Jacinda said that I thought was really important is they've got a majority of government for the first time in 50 years. So New Zealand are not going to be governed by a group of parties, they're going to be governed by the one. But what was important to Jacinda, in which I believe, I just think she's an amazing woman, is that the governing is for everybody. It doesn't matter whether people voted for you or not. That is about being inclusive of everybody. And that's where it's important to listen to them. So what has that got to do with big tech is rigging elections? Is that they're not. That they're simply saying that the stuff that's being posted on their platforms is full of conspiracy theories and is unfounded. And what interests me is that there'll be people that will say, well, the media should be reporting facts on one hand, and then they'll say on the other, but people like Facebook should be responsible for what's posted on their platforms. Well, this is about, I guess, these social media platforms taking responsibility for what is posted on their platforms. I had a friend of mine who got banned from Facebook. There was a heck of a lot of trouble getting back on because he made some obscure statement about Muslims. He wasn't having a go at Muslims at all. He just made a statement that when you looked at it, it was a quote. And so it was a quote from the Quran, I think, and a similar contextual quote from the Bible. And anyway, for whatever reason, Facebook thought that it was inappropriate, and he got banned. Now, I'm not suggesting that necessarily him being banned is a good or a bad thing. But I am suggesting that if you're in authority and you're making statements that are going to hurt or harm other people, then someone needs to mediate that. And if there is not an independent body that can do that for organisations like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, then I guess those organisations need to take responsibility. But they need to make sure that whatever decisions they made are not based on political ideology, that their views need to be separate from that. I don't know necessarily how one does that, but I guess we need to look at the merit of the decision. So if I've made a decision around Giuliani's stuff that he's posted about Hunter Biden, and I've come to realise that there's no evidence to support any of that, or the evidence at best is dicey, which it is, then I need to make a decision as to whether that's something that people on our platform need to be aware of. Funnily enough, as a result of Giuliani's stupid statements, it has received plenty of coverage, not just on Fox News, but on other media outlets as well. So the fact that Facebook and others have banned that information has made it more and more public, which is a bizarre consequence when you think about it, and it's probably servicing Giuliani and Trump even more, even though I think it's making him look more and more stupid. So we also have the virus. So coronavirus is increasing in Europe and particularly in the US. And I guess my overall comment in relation to that is that we're fortunate that we here in Australia have, for whatever reason, had enough premiers who haven't stuffed it up and who have closed the borders and done all that they can, particularly in terms of contact tracing, to be able to get a hold of this virus and eradicate it. So Western Australia, Western Australia, Queensland, Tasmania, South Australia, ACT and Northern Territory have virtually eradicated the virus. Now, that doesn't mean that it's still not simmering around in our communities, but what it does mean is that there are no outbreaks. That particularly in our state here in South Australia, we haven't had a case for weeks. And so, if the virus is out there, it's lurking around, but it's not available. It's not actually infecting anybody as far as we can tell. So that's a good thing. And there was an interesting article where from Rachel Baxendale, which is a Victorian political reporter, who reported that there were 500 Victorian doctors who urged Daniel Andrews to end the current lockdown restrictions, and abandon mandatory wearing of face masks and a 5 kilometre limit on movement when he announced his next step to ease on Sunday. So today he did. He didn't make those announcements. I don't know whether he made an announcement in relation to the abandonment of mandatory wearing of masks, but he has increased the area in which people can travel, because as of today, they're down to 2. And in a population, I guess, of 3 to 4 million, whatever they might be, that's not a bad outcome. And they have had enormous number of people get tested. Absolutely outstanding number of people get tested. And so, full marks to our friends in Victoria for that. Terribly sorry you haven't got the grand final, but, can't win it all. But if you had done the right thing in the first place, Mr. Andrews, I guess you would have the grand final. But you hadn't. Too bad. So they say in this report, the lockdown has had devastating economic and well-being effects on the community as a whole, with an alarming increase in mental health cases. And I guess that's something that does concern me as a social worker, and that we know that there have been some concerns about people that needed other treatments, such as cancer and other treatments, and whether or not they have been able to get those treatments as a result of the lockdown. And there was this thing where Matheson, who's this doctor that they're quoting here, says that the World Health Organization do not advocate lockdowns as the primary means of control of this virus. And I watched an interview with a woman from the World Health Organization the other day who said that it isn't the one thing that solves the problem, that lockdowns don't solve the problem. It's washing your hands, social distancing, and contact tracing, and isolation and quarantine. They're the things that make a difference. All of those things together. The countries that have done that the best have the best possible outcomes. And there was a further report. Oh, I wonder if I can find it here. There's a further report on that as well, which stated that now I won't be able to find it amongst all this crap. That actually had a map. So they talked about bear with. This is me being extremely well organised. I know I had it here somewhere because I thought it has a really interesting map. Or maybe it's amongst this stuff. And what it did show, even though I haven't got the map to refer to here, is that places like Taiwan and South Korea did exceptionally well. And the reasons why these countries did so well was that they have experienced SARS and other viruses over the last 10, 15 years as well. So they knew what to do. They were aware of the procedures required in order to combat these viruses because they've already been there. And what we in Australia didn't know was how to manage them in the same way that they did. And as a result, these countries which have, so South Korea I think has a population twice the size of Australia. So we in South Korea are pretty much level pegging because South Korea knew what to do. And New Zealand and Taiwan's the best, have the best outcome of any other countries in the world. Because not necessarily, New Zealand just did the shutdown, end of story. You can't go out, you can't do anything. Everybody was locked down, couldn't go to school. But Taiwan had a system of contact tracing that was second to none. And one of the other things too, I noticed that they talked about the app. So in Singapore, apparently, they developed an app that could be implemented in the case of a virus. Now, we have modified ours based on their app, but they, for whatever reason, they are far more technologically advanced than what we are, because 2/3 of their population acquired that app in a very short period of time and were using it. So and that's where it helped the contact tracing stuff, because they were able to identify people that definitely have been in contact with others than those that were either not asymptomatic, but those that had symptoms. So, there are some good things that have happened. Now, the real question is what happens beyond all of this. So what happens when the virus is dealt with? Will it always be in our community? Will there always be moments where we have to shut down in certain areas because we're busy contact tracing people, and there'll be people that will be in quarantine? Will I come across somebody who has got a condition and is symptomatic in some way, and then I will have to either quarantine, or am I likely to get it? I'm in an age group, believe it or not, that is subject to risk, I guess. So, and I'm coughing, but I've got this damn tickle in my throat. But what will be the eventual outcome in relation to all of this? Who knows? But I hope that there will be some sense of safety and security at the end of the COVID thing. I would imagine 2 or 3 years' time, we'll probably look back on this period, wonder how in the hell we survived it, basically pat ourselves on the back for having done so, and then hopefully would have learnt lessons from it, which I guess we hadn't, because we'll just go back to however it was that we were. It's rather distressing when you think about the fact that the United States had a COVID response team set up and organised, and that they had a booklet set out to teach people or the government has how to deal with a pandemic, and they threw it out because they didn't think it was necessary. Maybe that's a lesson that we should all learn from this point on, is that we should always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So thanks everybody for being with me on Things That Matter. I hope that you can get to share us and to subscribe, so that when we have these conversations in the next day or so, that you can join in. Thanks everybody. Take care. Look after yourselves and be safe.